Yes guys, how's it going? Welcome back to a new video. Hope you guys have all had a great Friday. Looking forward to the weekend. No Newcastle United this weekend. It is the international break, which, to be honest, doesn't normally excite me too much, but it is the last one before we get into the World Cup. So I will be watching to see how we'll line up, to be honest. Never mind how we'll get on. I don't even know who we're going to play in this game, but I thought I'd jump on anyway and talk a little bit about Eddie Howe and what seems to be an injury issue, an injury crisis, if you will, at Newcastle United, as it has now been revealed that while on international break, Alexander Isak has now been sent home and will not take part in either of the two Sweden games coming up over this international break. It's understood that he picked up what appeared to be a knock, went away with Sweden, and has now been sent back to Newcastle for assessment. We still don't know exactly what that injury is. We're praying that it is exactly that, and it is a knock. Additionally to that, we saw Bruno return from injury in the Bournemouth game. He went away with Brazil. It's being reported that he may not be available for Brazil's game tonight because he has also picked up an injury. Added to that, we've had the injury issues with Maxi, Wilson, and, a lot of hamstring injuries appear to be popping up here. Obviously, Crafty's had the ACL, Shelby's is a little bit different as well, but generally, we've got some big players there in Bruno, Wilson, Maxi, potentially even Isak, all picking up similar injuries. We have to wait and hear what exactly the problem is with Isak. And I thought I'd ask the question to you guys. What is going on here? Is it just pure luck that is not on our side? Is it training? Is it overworking the players? Is it the manic schedule that's affecting us, having to push the players too hard? And is it being made to feel potentially worse than it is because of the fact it's those players? When you've got your 3-4 best players all picking up a knock, it's generally going to feel a little bit worse than maybe 1 or 2 fringe players pick up a knock. And let's get it right. Every team, or a lot of teams, are having injury issues right now. It's not just us. It's easy to sit in our Newcastle bubble, and I do it as well, and think it's all us, when we have played other teams who have had injury troubles as well. But as I say, it is sometimes made to feel that little bit worse when it's those key players who are currently unavailable. And Eddie Howe has addressed this already. He actually did it before we played Liverpool on the injury issues. He was quite openly asked, is it a coincidence? Is this just part and parcel of what's going on? And Eddie Howe, who I find to be very neutral, he doesn't really go one way or the other. He's very careful with what he says, but this was actually one of the few answers Eddie Howe has given in an interview where I thought, wow, he's really putting his marker down on this one. He has a very clear and decisive opinion on this, and it's to do with the way Newcastle play their football. And Eddie Howe, of all the things Eddie Howe talks about, the one thing that he is dead certain on all the time is how he wants Newcastle to perform with the high press, win the ball back. And you can see that, to be fair. I found this really good graphic that I'll put on the screen now on Twitter. I think they are Manchester United fans, but that's all right. It's a great graphic, and it shows exactly how hard Newcastle are working and the amount of turnovers we've been able to create through that high press. So Eddie Howe was asked, is this a coincidence? Players coming out with, it's the hamstring injuries, and quite often that is associated with, overworking, overtraining. Eddie Howe said, it's obviously something that we've discussed internally, but I think when you see the effort the players are giving in the games, the physical outputs they are hitting at the moment, they're really, really good levels. As I say, we can see that on the charts. We can see it with the naked eye when we are watching those games. And under previous management, there was a lot of questions asked on, are the players fit enough? You know, we couldn't seem to manage to get through a whole game, never mind deploy a high press. So we've kind of gone from one to the other, and that was clearly a big thing for Eddie Howe, that he wanted them to be, you know, one of the fittest teams in the league. And there's certainly something to be said about that, especially, you know, in games in the Premier League. You know, not every team is matched with the same ability, but sometimes the effort and the work rate can really give you an edge in those games. He actually said that he believes that we are one of the fittest teams in the league, and that does come with a slight cost when you're putting the players at the maximum levels or trying to for the benefit of the team. So he's kind of saying there that we are kind of really, really pushing these players to be at that best, and sometimes there can be consequences in terms of injuries. And then he went on to say what I mentioned already. At the moment, it's every 2 or 3 days you're having to get them to give that. So it's certainly something we need to try and look at to get fresh players on the pitch when needed. And Eddie Howe does make substitutes. I think it's kind of coming away from the fitness and the injuries for a second. It's certainly something that I think we are also having an issue with, is there isn't really as much squad depth in the positions where the players have also been injured, which I think also makes the situation look worse. As I mentioned at the start of this video, is it a problem right now, or is it just the fact that it's the top 3 best players who all have got injured? You know, as I say, had it have been, for example, Dan Burn got injured, we've got Botman, Shaw, Lascelles. You know, there is players who can be in that position. You know, should it have been, you know, another player, had it have been Fraser, but Maxi could play, you know, you wouldn't really look at that and go, oh God, look at all those injuries, because when the main players are available, you don't think about it too much. And Eddie Howe talking about trying to bring fresh players on the pitch, it's hard, and we've seen that in games where we are at the moment, and we are building. Rome wasn't built in a day. Patience is a virtue, and we will get there. And there's already been a lot of talks about the January window already. You know, we're not even there yet. There's already lots of talks, and no doubt we're putting that effort in. I think it's the injuries are coupled with we don't have as much depth in those spots as we really need. So when Eddie Howe talks about trying to get fresh players on the pitch, trying to monitor what's going on with players, it's really hard to do that when you're having to bring off one of your best players to bring on a player who's not as good. And because of that, you run the risk of overplaying some of those players. I mean, the Isak one is maybe slightly different because he kind of came in, and we did actually end up having a week's break because of, you know, when all of the games got cancelled, and then we went into the international break. But and then even with Bruno as well, we brought him back. But I wouldn't have said we rushed him back, because he was due back some time ago. It's understood that Maxi and Wilson could well be fit in time for the Fulham game, and if they are, and potentially if this knock from Bruno is just a knock, we could be back to full fitness in a week and a half's time, and everything I've talked about is just slowly moved along, and we continue with the season. And I'm really hoping that's going to be the case. And I don't doubt for a second that Eddie Howe is definitely monitoring exactly what's going on here. But as I say, he goes on to say, you know, we're trying to see the warning signs of the players when they're tired and what we can do. But the thing that really stuck out for me, as I say, from Eddie Howe, who is quite a neutral man when he speaks in the interviews, he doesn't want to come across overly one way or the other. He said, ultimately, that's how we want to play. And I think it's how we want to be successfully. So, and he goes, so yeah, I think there will be injuries, especially during a campaign with the fixture list so congested. So, as I say, for someone who generally doesn't like to give an opinion one way or the other, he's basically saying, this is what we want to do. And if it comes at the cost of some injuries, that's the way it's going to be. Which I found very, very unlike Eddie Howe. But it's good for him to come out and be very defiant. And you can't argue with those statistics. And as I say, coming out of a season where we looked unfit and untrained. To see us play that way is fantastic, but to be quite as open about the fact that, yeah, people will get injured, and not to say that he's taking it lightly, but to be as open to say players will get injured if we want to play this way. And that's when it comes in, like, what is the answer? Because I don't think many Newcastle fans will think, and tell me down in the comments if you think differently. You know, to see us playing that way is brilliant. To see us go out there and match Man City 3-3, you know, in that fantastic game was exactly what we want to see, and we've said it for a very long time. We don't necessarily want a team who wins. We want to see a team that tries hard, and Eddie Howe is backing that to the wall. You know, he is making these players as fit as they've ever be, and try as hard as they've ever tried to do that. And do I want to lose that type of football? Absolutely not. But then with that comes in potential injuries. And as I say, I'll go back to the list I put in earlier. Is it because the players are pushing harder than maybe what their bodies have done in the past? So it's trying to get used to that. Could this continue? Could this just be the one-off where, as I say, it's made to feel worse because it's our 3 number 1 players, 4 now if you include Isak, which hopefully, as I say, is not an issue. Would you back down from that style of play in order to make sure these players are fit? It's a real strange one. And as I say, it could well be that everybody's fit in time for Fulham, and then it all goes away and everyone's fine and we play the rest of the season and we're all good and get to January to strengthen a little bit in January in those positions. But just right now, it just feels like we've just been hit by a bus. We've been hit by a ton of rocks because we started the season up with such high hopes for what we're going to do, and then quite quickly the injuries started creeping in. And then, as I say, right now, sat at home while the players are over on international duty going, God, please come back in one piece. And then next thing you know, both Bruno and Isak are having injury issues and the questions are being asked again. The hope is that Wilson is very close, and as I say, it could well be, if they are knocks, if Isak does miss the 2 Sweden games but gets assessed, maybe you'll be back in time for Newcastle. But let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think it's down to potentially players having not played this way but now are really pushing it? Do you think it is literally just the coincidence and we've just got unlucky at the start of this season, and had it been, you know, maybe more fringe players, or had we had more depth, would we have kind of moved around this without it feeling like we've really been hit by that injury problem? Is it down to the fixture list? Is it the fact that these players are getting asked to play too much straight off the back on international duty, then back again, then it's the midweeks? Let me know your thoughts on all of that down below. But it's clear that Eddie Howe wants to play a style of football, and it's certainly a good way to play it. We will have to see how it's managed and try and, as I say, get through what is a tough time without some really good players, and just hope we can press on, recover, and see what we can do next. Alright guys, thanks for watching as always. Drop a like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this video. Obviously a bit of a talky one today, but I thought it was an interesting point. And as I say, for Eddie Howe, who's generally quite a neutral, as I say, doesn't necessarily jump one way or the other, tries to sit quite calm in the middle. I did find those points of, this is how I want to do it, that's the way we're going to do it, and if we do pick up some problems along the way, we'll deal with them, but it's not something that I plan on changing. So let me know your thoughts on all of that down below. Have a great weekend. As I say, subscribe if you're new. Loads of Newcastle and general football content on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.